Day. Now is the hour. I'm sure you've noticed that each year almost all the major news magazines put out an issue with special pictorial sections recalling people and events that made news during the previous year. Many magazines also include articles by experts predicting what they expect to see happening in the years ahead. Some even go as far as to make predictions covering 10 or 20 more years in the future. In the past, a few of these predictions have proven amazingly accurate, while others couldn't have been more wrong. Illustration. For example, back in 1967, experts predicted by the turn of the century, technology would have taken over so much of the world we'd do that the average American work week would only be 22 hours long, and that we would work only 27 weeks a year. As a result, one of our biggest problems would be in deciding what to do with all of our leisure time. Well, I don't know about you, but that prediction certainly missed the mark as far as my life is concerned. In fact, most of us seem to be very busy. We're always in a hurry. We walk, talk fast, and eat fast. And after we all eat, and all too often we stand up and say, "Excuse me, I gotta run." So here we are, the first Sunday of the year 2012. I wonder how we'll do this year. Will we be busy as usual? Will we make any better use of our time? In 362 days, when this year is over, we'll be looking back with joy or with regret. Will we be looking at the future with anticipation or with dread? There is a passage of Scripture that I believe can be of help to us as we look forward to the rest of the year 2013, if we'll listen to it. This passage is Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15 and 17, and here's what it says. "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is." Proposal. I think that in this passage, the Apostle Paul presents some important lessons that we need to consider for our life this year. Our time on this earth is limited. First of all, we must be very careful how we live because our time on this earth is limited. The psalmist wrote, "Show me, O Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting is my life." Chapter 39, verse 4. And again, the length of our days is 70 years or 80. If we have the strength, they quickly pass and we fly away. Chapter 90, verse 10. Now I realize that for some of you, the younger folk, 70 or 80 years old, this sounds like a long, long time. In fact, I can remember when I thought anyone over 40 was ancient. I'm over 40. But no longer is that all rather relative or not. Illustration. For example, 4 teenagers in love talking together in the car, an hour or two seems like the blink of an eye. But for mom and dad worrying about what's going out in that car, an hour or two seems like an eternity. The psalmist also tells us to number our days so that we will develop a heart of wisdom. Illustration. A few years ago, People magazine published an article entitled "Dead Ahead," talking about a new clock that keeps track of how much time you have left to live. It calculates an average lifespan of 75 years for men and 80 years for women. So you program your sex and age into the clock, and from then on it will tell you how much time you have left to live. The clock sold for $99.99. I didn't buy one, but it is an intriguing idea. Isn't that what the psalmist told us to do, to number our days? When I first heard about the clock, I figured out that if I lived to be 75 years old, that I would have just about 27 more years to go. That's all. Just another 27 years to go, and I'd be 75 years old. But wait a minute. Neither you or I have a guarantee of even one day more to live. In fact, the Bible tells us not to count on tomorrow because tomorrow may not come for you or me. All we have is right now. So our time on this earth is valuable because it's very limited. We need to make the most of our opportunities. Secondly, Paul tells us that we must make the most of every opportunity. And he gives us a reason, because the days are evil. Yes, we are living in evil days. Jesus said that Satan is a thief and a liar and a robber. And one of the things the devil tries to do is to rob from us is our time, because time is a very precious possession. Just think of the time wasted in sinning. Think of the time wasted in bars, or in gambling casinos, or in buying lottery scratch-off tickets only to win your dollar back or to get nothing back, or in other shallow affairs. Think of the time wasted in gossiping or spreading rumors, or think about all the time wasted worrying about the consequences of sin that we have committed. Satan is a thief and a robber. But it's not just sin that makes demands on our time. Sometimes even good things can make demands, and good things can take up a lot of time. Illustration. Jesus went to the home of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Jesus sat down to teach, and Mary was sitting at his feet, just soaking in every word. Meanwhile, Martha was out in the kitchen preparing dinner. Now you know the story. It is found in Luke chapter 10. Martha gets upset because Mary is not in the kitchen, and so she complains to Jesus, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," Jesus answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Luke chapter 10, verses 40 and 42. Now, was Martha committing a sin by fixing a meal in the kitchen? No, of course not. But here's the problem. She was so preoccupied with what she was doing that she didn't realize that God was in her house. Application. This is the same mistake that you and I make almost every day. We get so caught up in the here and now that we fail to deal with the eternal, the things that will last forever and ever. Illustration. Richard Swenson, a medical doctor, wrote a book in which he discusses one of the major maladies of our time, which is anxiety and stress. He calls it overload. And he says that people are just plain overloaded with anxiety and stress. Number one, we're overloaded with commitments. We're committed ourselves to go here and there and to take part in this activity and that social function. As a result, we soon begin meeting ourselves coming and going because we have overloaded ourselves in the area of commitments. Two, we're overloaded with possessions, he says. Our closets are full and our garages are overflowing. Get rid of it. Get rid of what you don't need. We've gone into debt to pay for all of these things, and we simply must have too much. This is why we're overloaded with possessions. And now we're so afraid that someone will steal our possessions. We are overloaded in the area of possessions. Thirdly, we have an overload in the work area. We get up early, fight traffic, and experience intolerable working conditions because we have to if we're going to pay for rent, for groceries, and for other possessions that we supposedly need. 4, there's also an information overload. He said that as a doctor, he has to read 220 articles a month just to keep up with all the changes in his profession. Again, I'm referring to Richard Swenson, a medical doctor. And now with the internet, there's an information superhighway. But the problem isn't that we can't possibly absorb it all, so we feel an overload in this area also. Summary. I could go on, but you get the picture. There are so many demands on our time, so many good things that need to be done, but there are just 8,760 hours of time in every year. and we've already used 58 hours of that time. We do want to make the most of every opportunity. So what are we going to do? Let's understand what the Lord's will is. Well, to answer that, Paul, the Apostle Paul tells us, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Now, what do you think God's will is for you in this new year, 2013? Do you think He wants your mind so saturated with worries and anxieties that you can't think spiritual thoughts? Do you think He wants your calendar so crowded that you don't have time for the important things? What do you think God's will is for you this year? Hey, let me make a couple of suggestions for you to consider. First of all, establish your priorities. One, I'm assuming that since you're in church this morning, that you believe God should be part of your life. But when you begin to establish priorities, you have to decide just where God stands in your life. So ask yourself, who or what is most important in my life? And I'm hoping that your answer will be my relationship with God, my relationship with Jesus Christ. That's important to me, and I hope it's important to you too. If so, then put that at the top of your list of priorities and say, this will affect my decisions, my scheduling, my relationship with others, and my whole outlook on life. Therefore, when Sunday rolls around, neither rain nor shine nor football time will interfere with my being in church, because Jesus comes first in my life. I'll worship Him, and nothing will interfere with that. You also need to schedule some definite time each year and each day to pray and to read God's Word from the Bible. Pray for yourself and for your family, for people around you. Pray for the church and for the missionaries. Sometimes they feel so alone and so far away. You'll never know how much your prayers will mean to them. But you'll be blessed as you grow in your faith and trust in the Lord. And also pray for the American soldiers doing their work for America over in foreign countries. 3, you must also spend time with your family. Every husband here ought to have a date night with his wife. I'm serious. You ought to have a date night for husbands to spend with their wives. A time when just the two of you get away and don't have anything else to interrupt your time together. No beepers, no telephones, no interruptions, and you can just talk. Maybe at a nice restaurant or at home, and then let the kids watch television in another room. Whatever it is, spend time together, husbands and wives. Spend time with your children too. They're growing up ever so fast. These are precious moments. Don't let them get away. Make sure that you spend quality time with your children. Make sure that your family is very high on your priority list. 4, now most of us have to work, and I think Christians ought to be good workers. When someone hires a Christian, they ought to know they're getting someone who will give them an honest day's work and not cheat them. Because we're Christians, we have a responsibility to the Lord to honor Him, even in the marketplace. Summary. So first of all, establish your priorities. B, and then learn how to live today. The 2 great enemies of time are regrets for things we did in the past and anxiety about what will happen to us in the future. Most of us are living to get either in the past or in the future. In fact, many of us are engaged in the little game of, I wish it were here, I wish it were next week, or I wish it were next month, or some such thing. Kids go to school and say, boy, I wish this day was over. Illustration. Gary Freeman tells us about a girl who went to college and just hated it. But she told herself, if I can ever get out of college and get married and have children, I'll finally be able to enjoy life. So she stuck with it. She went to classes every day, and she finally graduated from college. Then she got married and had children and discovered that children are a lot of work. So she told herself, if I can just get these kids raised, then I'll have time to relax and really enjoy life. But about the time the kids were entering high school, her husband said, guess what? We don't have enough money to send our kids to college. I guess you'll have to get a job. Oh boy, the wife has to get a job. Well, she didn't want to, but she knew he was right and they needed the extra money. So the wife went to work, and she hated it, but she told herself, if I can just get these kids out of college and get all the bills paid, then I can quit work and really enjoy life. Finally, the last child graduated from college, and all the bills were paid. So she walked into her employer's office and said, I quit. He said, oh, you don't want to quit now. If you stay with us just another 8 years, you'll have a pension for the rest of your life. She thought, well, I don't want to work another 8 years, but there's all that money there, and I really can't turn down the opportunity. So she worked for another 8 years. Finally, she and her husband retired at the same time. They sold their home and bought a little retirement cottage, and she finally had her pension fund. Then they sat down on the swing on their front porch and looked at the family picture album and dreamed about the good old days. Illustration. Someone said, life is what happens to you while you're making plans to do something else. True, isn't it? Another year has come and gone. A new year stretches before us. Help us, Lord, to redeem the time, so have a happy new year. Illustration. And during the new year, you may have enough happiness to keep you sweet, enough trials to keep you strong, enough sorrow to keep you human, enough hope to keep you happy, enough failure to keep you humble, enough success to keep you eager, enough friends to give you comfort, enough wealth to meet your needs, and enough enthusiasm to make you look forward to tomorrow, and enough determination to make each day better than the day before. Lord, please help us to use the 8,760 hours of this year the wisest way we can for you and for your glory. Conclusion. Romans chapter 13, verse 11 and verse 12 says, the hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds